Infidelity is not a one-size-fits-all situation. But I will say, being in the company of women who actually understood what I was experiencing, how I was feeling, it did something for me that I didn't even know I needed. Initially, I thought, wow, this is going to be overstimulating. Like, I'm going to be surrounded by women who are equally as sad. And some of them were sadder than me. And I'm thinking, like, they can't even talk about their situation without crying. Meanwhile, I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't over it completely, but I might have still been in shock, because I attended this workshop 2 months after, it was 2 months. I had to look down the days on my binder. But 2 months after I became separated, I attended the workshop. So I was fresh into my separation. Y'all, listen. I'm really excited, and I know I did this whole little like, hey y'all, and screamed and all the things in our initial episode for season 2. But what I need y'all to know is, like, this is my first solo episode for season 2, and I'm so excited. I think last season I did mention that I love my guest episodes, and I genuinely do. But right now, I'm just in this space of loving my solo episodes, okay? Because I've been really tapping into my solitude, so I'm super excited. It's a fresh start, new beginning, all the things. We're gonna be talking about some fun stuff. Last season was just, it was heavy a little bit, I think. I had some funny moments. I watched everything just as y'all did. And sometimes I was like, girl, that's what we want to talk about today? But you gotta let the Lord use you. And, also be prepared. These are the things we need to talk about if we're gonna put our stuff out there. So now I think it's more fun. It's a little lighter. We will have some heavy moments, but at the same time, I think it'll be things that are just relatable and just stuff I've been experiencing. So season 2 is different. I'm not talking about my story anymore. Y'all know I got divorced. Y'all know why I got divorced. All that stuff. Necessary information, but we moving along. So to kick things off, I really felt it was necessary to share with y'all the tools that I use to help me in this journey of healing. And it was not easy. I'm still on the healing journey, but I think in the beginning it was necessary to really be intentional about the resources and the tools that I use to jumpstart that journey. And so today I'm going to talk about the things that I personally did. It's a few things that really pushed me along. And now let me think. I will be candid. If you're seeing this, I have been, let me think. I'll say I became separated maybe, almost 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago. Next month will make 2 years since I've been separated. And then I guess I'll be I'm a few months shy of being a year divorced. So that's great, which is amazing. I haven't even really thought about that. So yeah. So I really have some tools, y'all, because I have come a long way. I can admit that I'm fully over that divorce. I feel like I've been over it, even before it was legalized. But at the same time, that's neither here nor there. No shade if you take time. But for me, it's been a journey. So I'm gonna jump straight in. I've got some things, y'all. Let me show y'all. I've got some things for y'all today. I'm gonna really take y'all on a journey of the things that helped me get through this, because it was not easy. Some of the things, actually, most of the things were very uncomfortable, but I had to really ask myself, between the stuff that happened in my marriage and the things that were gonna help me get through this divorce, what's really uncomfortable? How uncomfortable is uncomfortable? Because at some point we got to get back to the comfortability, but it's going to take being uncomfortable. So I'd rather be uncomfortable in a healing stage than uncomfortable in a marriage, which should not be uncomfortable, So I don't know. Let me see. Let me go to my questions. The phone, we back. You know what it is. The first question is, what was the first step I took toward healing? The first step was leaving. It's funny to think about, but at the same time, it's real. Like the first step is removing yourself physically from the environment that you were hurt in. That traumatic environment. I mean, some people do live in separations. I don't know. That's not the proper term. But when I was going through the legal process, there is a term where you basically are still in the home with your spouse, but you're separated. There's no way I could do that. Now, I was fortunate enough to have somewhere to go. Everybody's not so fortunate. So I understand if that is something you have to do. And I actually know people personally who have had to do those like the separation while they're in the home with each other. And I imagine that's very hard, especially when you have been mistreated. But I was fortunate enough to not be in that situation. So I left. And I'm one of those people who, out of sight, out of mind. So once I don't have to see something all the time or just like be around it or be in that environment, it's almost like, I'm not going to say like, oh, I automatically was over it. Like, no, it still hurt. And, you have your thoughts and your memories and your triggers. But once I was removed from the home, I was able to kind of put my focus elsewhere. It's like, it's not right in front of me. So it comes up here and there, but it's not just in front of me every time I open my eyes. So yeah, that first step was definitely removing myself. I think I spoke about this in a previous episode in season 1, but when I realized I needed to leave my marriage, it was only a week in between the time of seeing something that said, this is encounter number what? I need to go. Versus like, okay, we actually physically are moving out today. It was just a week. So that was pretty quick, one would say, but I needed that. And initially I actually thought I would give myself 90 days. Insane to think on, but you know what? Shout out to my therapist because she was like, I don't think 90 days is feasible, but you do what you need to do. And as that week progressed, I was like, we gotta go ASAP. So the first step was literally removing myself physically. Now, question number 2, what tool or practice made the biggest difference in my journey? There's different practices and tools and all the things. So let me sit this down because we about to go in. Now, y'all, I showed y'all all my things. So after moving out, I have to kind of take myself on the journey of the timeline. But after moving out, I want to say the next thing that happened, it was a workshop. Now, mind you, y'all know I was already in regular therapy. I was in therapy. I had been in therapy 4 years prior to, like I had been in therapy by the time I decided I need to leave my marriage. So therapy wasn't new to me. So I was still in therapy. I think I was meeting with her bi-weekly. So that was a thing. But something that happened and it was unexpected. It was something I had never heard of before. One of the pastors at the church I was attending at the time, when I opened up about where I was and what was going on in my relationship, he was like, you need to attend this workshop. Now, y'all, I'm like, okay, worst time of my life and you're suggesting I go to a workshop. I was open to anything. Not because I thought I was going to work on my relationship, but just because I was so desperate for healing, because I felt like this is the lowest place I've ever been emotionally. Well, really everything, like emotionally, spiritually, mentally, like it was just, I was low. So I'm thinking, well, whatever you can give me to help me push myself forward, at minimum, I'm open to it. I'm open to hear what you're going to say. I don't know if I'm going to go, but I'm open. So that's this. Let me lean it on in. I don't know. So it's something called Bethesda Workshops. And I have my actual binder. And, you know, it was out of state. The church was so gracious to say, hey, look, we will pay for this. We will cover your flight, your boarding, the conference fee. And I will be candid. It was thousands of dollars. And I'm so grateful. I would shout out the church, but that would be incriminating. We don't do that here. So won't do that part. But shout out to y'all if y'all watching, you know. But they were so sweet. They paid for everything. And, you know, I did very little research. I'll be honest. I spoke to the pastor about it, who he actually is a therapist himself, but he said, hey, I think this will be beneficial for you. It's a workshop that focuses on sex addiction. And I know y'all probably were like, when I said that, sex addiction sounds crazy. And on my end, I was considered a victim of sex addiction. So that means my partner was a sex addict. And I don't want it to sound crazy. I know it can sound a little harsh, but it's a very broad term. So like when you hear sex addict or sex addiction, it doesn't mean like this person has to always have sex. Like that's not what that means. And I ain't gonna dive too deep now because it's just me. I'm not a professional when it comes to these things. I'm not a therapist. I'm just, explaining what I experienced. And I wanted to be easy to understand because even when I heard a lot of these terms, I was like, oh my God, this is crazier than I thought. Like, no. But anybody who is a serial cheater, especially in the physical sense, would be considered a sex addict. So that's just the bottom line. That's what it is. So I went to the workshop. It was out of state. It was over the span, I think, of like 4 or 5 days. And basically what they have is they have 2 groups of people and they do it for men and women. This is not just singular gender. Like this is for men and women. It's for anyone who wants to attend. It is a faith-based, a Christian-based workshop though. So like if you don't identify as a Christian or like that's not your religion of choice, then this might not be for you. But if you do, then it's perfect. But they have 2 groups for the men and women where like you attend the workshop and there are individuals who are technically the victims of being in a relationship with a sex addict. And then they have the other side of it where it's like you are the sex addict. And so to give a general overview also, because I don't know how much of this is, I don't know how much I really can say because again, I don't want to turn anybody away from it. So it's like, if you choose to attend something like this, you need to attend and have an open mind and also be learning about what they offer while you're there and not from me. Because I didn't know too much going into it, which I think was best. But they separate us into 3 groups. Or we have, I'll say 3 sessions over the span of the few days. And, you have like a small group, which I think had like 5 of us in it. And then we had a middle group, which did separate the people who were the victims. And I put this in quotes now because I don't feel like a victim, but it did happen to me. And then you had like the middle group, which was the people who were the victims and then the people who were the actual sex addicts. And then we had a large group where everybody was together. And so the people leading these sessions though are licensed therapists, which also was interesting because I'm like, oh my God, how much therapy do I need? Like, am I sick here? But when you go through certain things, especially traumatic experiences, you might need a little extra therapy. So they broke it up like that. And I didn't know these women. I was nervous. I flew out of town. I'm in a place I had been before, but for a very different reason. I'll be open about that. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. So love Nashville, one of my favorite cities, I gotta admit. And if you haven't been, you need to go. And if you think I'm crazy for saying that, I don't know what your experience was if you've been, but I love Nashville. It's fun. But in this moment, I was going to Nashville for something very serious and I was kind of like, oh, this is weird. But, if you know me, I'm really an introvert. Like I can be open, I can be lively, and really I can be outgoing when I'm in a space that I'm comfortable in. But flying somewhere where I didn't know who was going to be there, I didn't know anybody. I hadn't been to this part of Nashville. So I just was like, I'm looking for some healing. If they say this will help me, I'm going to go. But I got there and I want to say our class size, it maybe had like, it was less than 30, more than 25. So we'll go with that. And most of the women there were in the same group as me, on the same side of things where their husbands, and I know we're in a society in a time where like everybody doesn't have a husband, but I know in this group, everybody had a husband, but their partners. Their partners were the ones who were the ones being unfaithful. And so, you know, a lot of us related. And then there was like a very small portion of women, maybe like less than a handful of them, who were on the side of like they did something. I will be honest, there was only one woman in that small group where she actually cheated on her husband. But the other ones, they were addicted to certain things, but they weren't cheating. And I'll leave it at that. So it was very unique. I was actually being opened up to things that I just hadn't thought about, because I think I was so consumed with my own situation. So it was a little different. I was like, well, I don't know, like, should I be here? Am I in the right space? But over the span of a few days, you know, between the large group, the middle group, and the small groups, we were meeting with these therapists. I mean, I don't even remember. It may have been like 5 people on staff. The founder was there, who she actually has an amazing story. Shout out to Marnie. She has a really amazing story. But the people there made us feel super welcoming. We worshiped together. We listened to each other's stories. They had some presentations. Again, y'all see this thing. Y'all see this. There's a binder of information, like sharing so many things and tools from a therapist standpoint. So think about, like, these are actual psychological tools, like things we need to consider and better understand not only how we ended up in this situation, but like understand where our partners may have been coming from when they were actually cheating and doing whatever. And to understand this deeper, everybody was not physically cheating. So like when I say cheating, it is a broad spectrum. It's not like this person's partner slept with whoever. That's not what I'm saying, because that's not everybody's story. And I know that just based on the stories I heard. It could be a plethora of things, you know, that happen, but infidelity is not a one-size-fits-all situation. But I will say, being in the company of women who actually understood what I was experiencing, how I was feeling, it did something for me that I didn't even know I needed. Initially, I thought, wow, this is going to be overstimulating. Like, I'm going to be surrounded by women who are equally as sad. And some of them were sadder than me. And I'm thinking, like, they can't even talk about their situation without crying. Meanwhile, I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't over it completely, but I might have still been in shock, because I attended this workshop 2 months after, it was 2 months. I had to look down other days on my binder. But 2 months after I became separated, I attended the workshop. So I was fresh into my separation, but I also knew, like, ain't no way I'm getting back with this man. Not at that moment. I was like, no, we getting divorced, that's it. So being around those women, I did think initially, like, this might be really hard for me to be around, because I empathize with a lot of people, not everyone, but when I try to be sincere, and when I feel that there's sincere energy being pushed back towards me, I feel like it's hard for me to not empathize. So being around women that are crying and I was gonna say soaking, maybe they should have been, I don't know. But being around women who are like deeply in their emotions and they're feeling it and they're like crying when they hear trigger words or whatever. Honestly, I'm like, I'm about to be crying the whole time. I'm about to be, whatever. That actually was not the case. While I felt for them, I had a deep sense of gratitude to be surrounded by people who understood exactly where I was. So I do feel like, I try my best to show up and be a light. And not like that was my intent, because I tried to feel the emotions, but I realized, like, I'm still gonna be myself. Y'all know I'm goofy. I like to laugh. I'm silly. I'm sarcastic. I'm all of that. I really don't try to be too serious all the time unless I absolutely need to be. So I actually enjoyed being around them. But, over the span of a few days, I realized, like, I'm just in a different space than some of these women, most of them really. I will admit I was the youngest. I was one of the youngest in there. But within my group, remember, there's 2 groups, the smaller group of like the sex addicts and then the bigger group of the victims. I was the youngest in the victims group. And then I also was the only Black woman at the whole thing. Now, I wasn't the only woman of color, but I was the only Black woman. And so I just felt a little removed from certain things. But something else I realized is that I also was the only one in that group that was very sure of the next steps I was going to take in my relationship. And again, like, our situations were different. Some had been married a very long time. I had been married a very short time. So there were different things like that to consider. But I realized, like, I don't necessarily, we don't necessarily align completely, but I can understand how they feel because I also feel the same way. And so I took a lot of things from that workshop. They definitely took measures that, again, I will not say everything in detail, but they took measures to ensure that we were super focused on what we were taking in and the information they were giving us. And so you kind of didn't have a choice but to just give it your all, you know? And it was something that I don't regret. I think it was necessary for me to attend that workshop to kind of just learn about myself and also learn about other people's stories. Because this may sound crazy. Y'all don't have all the details on my situation, and you probably never will unless you're like in my inner circle. But when I heard some of these women's stories, I was like, whoa, they make my situation sound like nothing. And based on the things y'all have sent me, because y'all have DM me, text me, whatever, some of y'all heard my story, like what I told you or what you really heard on camera. Because again, the friends that have like been around me and gotten the phone calls and the voice messages and all the things, they heard the real, like they heard the details. So what you heard on camera, some of y'all DM me like, I can't believe this happened. So imagine if you can't believe what happened to me. If y'all heard some of these women's stories, y'all would really like fall out, because some of these stories, I was just like, how did you get here? Like, what? And not only how did you get here, how are you still considering being with this person? Child, I heard some stuff, like stuff that I was like, I wish I knew somebody in Lifetime or BET or something, because this could be a movie, it could be a show, it needs to be on TV. Disclaimer, I don't find it entertaining. However, I know the type of stuff that gets the high ratings, and the stories I was hearing, I'm like, this one gets some high ratings. That's all I'm saying. It's not entertaining because it is people's lives. And again, like even my stuff, it's not entertaining. And I said this before, it's my real life. So it's not something to be like, well, this is enjoyable content. Like maybe, but also no. It's not meant to be enjoyed, but it is meant to be relatable. Now, if you enjoy it because of the personality and the charisma that comes with that storytelling, we'll go with that. But like the information itself is not entertaining. So let's be clear. But I was hearing some stuff that I just thought, like, I've only heard of that in film. But this was really their life. And I was just thinking like, wow, this is really sad. But it made me appreciate where I was. It made me appreciate the fact that I am young. I can get out of this. And also I have somewhere to go. I have support. But now I do have some tools and some perspective, because I also gained a lot of compassion for my ex, because at the workshop, there were certain things they were explaining from a psychological standpoint. Again, these people are therapists and have been for years. They didn't have like these young therapists. Like these people have been practicing for 20 plus years, and they had men and women. And they were explaining certain things, how the brain works and how people think, and if, how past traumatic experiences can build the foundation for future situations that just might cause people to treat others in their life less than favorably. That's the best way I can put it. And keeping that in mind, while I was like, dang, I had to be in the crossfire, the crosshairs of this situation, and now I'm on the brink of a divorce, it was kind of like, well, what was he experiencing? And like, what did he go through in his life that caused him to treat me in this way? So I kind of left with a sense of compassion, which is crazy to say, because I'm like, whoa, compassion for the man who cheated on me and had no regard to me and my health and safety. But I really did. I was like, dang, like, what did he experience? That like, this was actually something he could do. And do it repeatedly. That, you know, when I try my best to just show up as a safe space for him. So I just had a lot of questions, but I kind of had this soft spot of like, wow, I really hope that more individuals, not just men, but more individuals will get help and seek the help that they need, especially if they feel like they're taking part in something that they don't even quite understand, but they have that urge to do something that actually is wrong. I really want them to get the help. Like, those were the thoughts I was having. So overall, the workshop was amazing. Something I could have never imagined I would end up at, because it was different. I suppose I'll put the information in the details in the description of this episode, but look into it, because you may not need this. Somebody you know might need it. You never know, but it's worth exploring. It's a great resource. They have podcasts that they have on the website, all the things, like, you might not even attend, but like, you will find this to be helpful in some capacity. And anyone actually I'll be honest, anybody that has experienced infidelity, this could be a good source. Again, if you're a Christian, because if you're not, again, it's a faith-based thing, but, it's a great resource. It's something that I found helpful to me. Scary and different, very outside of my normal experiences in life, but, helpful nonetheless, because I've been through therapy, but even having therapy, I was like, what is this? Why am I here? This is different. But it turned out to be good. And I think there are some lifelong connections that I made, people that I have talked to even this year. And I went two years ago. So I think, it's something that paid off. And also it helped alleviate some of the anxiety I had around leaving my relationship. There was a lot that came up with that, but having gone through the workshop, it just provided more clarity for me. It helped me get to know myself a little better. And it was like a deep time of reflection, not only with like the women I was around, but like with God. I really had to tap in spiritually, because at that moment, that probably was like the lowest I felt. I was really able to sit with myself, and that was it. I'm at a workshop. I'm going to the hotel at night by myself, in a room by myself. No, the TV didn't work. I don't know if that was on purpose. TV didn't even work. And it was a nice hotel, but it just was like the circumstance. And I'm like, maybe this is a time of reflection. I had my journal. I had my Bible. I had a book to read. I was just like, let me sit and really be in my thoughts and reflect on like where I am right now. Reminder, 2 months post-separation. So again, like in the thick of it. So it was helpful. It won't be for everybody. I know that. But again, it's an option. So with that, I wanted to go to like the next little resource that I used, because as y'all know, I was already in regular therapy, and I had been for 4 years, I think, at that point. And then I went to this workshop. Now, this is where it gets crazy. Let me sit this down. This is where it gets interesting, y'all. Now, I was in regular therapy, but because I was in regular therapy, and with the same therapist I started with, she told me, look, you're on an interesting journey right now, girl. You might need some extra therapy. You're not going to just need me. You need extra therapy. So when she told me, I remember thinking like, I know you're not dumping me. And she wasn't. As you know, if I really thought that, I probably was a little triggered, because our marriage counselor had dumped us. But I was like, oh my God, like, you're not going anywhere. And she's like, no, girl, like, I'm not dumping you, but you gonna need some extra therapy. She said, I want you to consider EMDR.